Have you ever looked at your profit and loss statement and you just don't understand why the numbers on that statement don't match the numbers in your bank account? Yes, it says you were profitable, but where is that profit? Well, today I want to teach you exactly how to read your profit and loss so you can catch any errors that are there and also understand exactly where your money is going and how that number got there. Hey guys, I'm Abby Johnson with Matterhorn Business Development. I am a certified profit first professional, which means that I work with my clients to ensure that they are keeping more money in their business and more money in their pockets and making sure they are truly profitable and financially free in their business. If that sounds interesting to you, check out our program below, Adventure to Profit. You can start a free trial at the link below. So what I see a lot with my clients is they have an accountant, which is great, and they just kind of relinquish control and knowledge of their finances to the accountant. They just sit back, wait to get that profit and loss report, and then when they do get that profit and loss report, they don't even understand it. All they know is it's the end of the year and their accountant is telling them they owe a bunch of money in taxes. So I want to go over every piece of the profit and loss statement today so that you understand what you're looking at and you know what questions to ask your accountant for clarity if needed. The other thing I see is I will say when I'm looking at someone else's profit and loss, about 90% of the time I find an error. And this is usually because the bookkeeper or whoever's keeping track of the numbers simply just miscategorizes something because they don't know what the purpose was behind that purchase. So another thing I want you to keep your eye on with your own profit and loss is if any of these expenses look kind of out of the ordinary, out of whack. No, I definitely didn't spend that much money on that item. And then you can coordinate and make sure that it's classified correctly with your accountant or bookkeeper. All right, so I've got a fake profit and loss statement here. I just made this super simple. Yours might look more complex than this, but I just want to break this down very simply. So the first item on here is revenue. That's pretty simple. That's how much money your business brought in. But there is a trick here of why this number might not be correct or why it might be different than what you think it is. You might look at this and say, well, my revenue is actually $450,000. Why does this say $500,000? So there is something in accounting called cash versus accrual. When you're looking at a report, especially of QuickBooks or something like that, you can easily toggle between these two choices and either run the report as cash or accrual. But basically, accrual is an accounting method where it's basing your income and your expenses off of the invoices you have sent out. Let's say in my example where it's a $50,000 difference, you have $50,000 out in accounts receivable waiting to get paid on these invoices. That revenue that you generated has already been counted as revenue on your profit and loss, and it's already going to be factored into your taxes. So you might not have that money in your account yet, but the accounting is factoring in that you do. So there's one reason why your profit and loss might not match what you think it should or match what is in your bank is you are looking at the accrual numbers versus the cash numbers. I really like looking at things in cash because being a profit first professional, I'm looking at cash flow and I'm helping people look at exactly what is coming in and out of their account. But it is also helpful to see how much revenue was generated overall for the year. Just make sure you know which one you're looking at, which report you're pulling, or if you don't have direct access to your profit and loss, you know what to ask for from your accountant. You can say, hey, I want to see this in cash and accrual, or just cash or just accrual, and know what you're looking at now. So now we're going to go to the next section of your profit and loss, and that's cost of goods. So these are the direct costs that are associated for you to execute your service or product. I mostly work with service companies, so those are the examples I'm thinking of right now. So let's say you sell t-shirts or something. The hard costs of the shirts, the ink, the things needed to actually create those t-shirts, those are cost of goods. And usually this is called cost of goods sold, and it only shows up on your profit and loss statement once that item is sold. For example, if you paid $1,000 for t-shirts, you paid for $1,000 in inventory, but you only sold half of that inventory, then only $500 is going to show up on your profit and loss. Again, this is another way your profit and loss might look different than what you know to be true in terms of cash flow. So you might see your profit and loss and say, well, I know I paid $1,000 in inventory, not $500. That's because the profit and loss is just showing the cost of the goods that were sold. Now, on the flip side, in home services or something like that, that. You're going to see a lot of like your supply costs in here. So the hard materials you're using to execute your job. If you're in an industry like me where I'm coaching, it's just a direct service. I don't really have a cost of goods associated with that. I do have costs as a business, and I have operating expenses to keep my business going, marketing and softwares and all that. But in terms of actually delivering my services, I don't have a hard cost directly associated to that. So in this example, $500,000 in revenue and now $200,000 in cost of goods. This gives us a number called gross profit, which is $300,000. So this isn't your final net profit. We're going to get to that. This is called your gross profit. So a mistake I see some business owners make is they're only thinking with gross profit. They price out a job, they look at how much materials and labor are going to be for the job, and they say, cool, I'm making 30% gross profit on this job. That's fine. But they aren't factoring in all of these other expenses below here that they're going to have to pay for as well. So it's important to understand that gross profit is not net profit. It's not the end all be all, and you still have more expenses after this. All right, this next section of the P&L is your expenses. This is all of your expenses beyond cost of goods. As I mentioned, this is your advertising, your rent, your insurance, your payroll, all of those things outside of the hard costs with your product or service. Let's just look at this list here. This is a pretty abbreviated but general list. These are usually expenses everyone has. One thing I do want to point out here is this item called depreciation. You might have this item on your profit and loss if you have an accountant who's handling things for you. So let's look at the actual definition of depreciation. Here it says depreciation is prorating the cost of an asset over its useful life. It is the act of reducing the value as stated in the company's accounts of a particular asset over a particular period of time. For example, let's say you buy a $10,000 piece of equipment. This is called an asset. It is an asset to your business. It doesn't normally go on your profit and loss. So that's another factor here is if you bought assets in the last year, like these big purchases, usually anything over $2,500, they don't go on your profit and loss. They show up on another report called your balance sheet. So let's say 3 years ago, you bought this $10,000 piece of machinery. Your accountant is going to use this depreciation method to spread out the costs over the span of that asset's life. In this example, we have $1,000 in depreciation. This is really just for accounting purposes. You are getting $1,000 write-off essentially because of that piece of equipment. So instead of getting a $10,000 write-off in 1 year, it's getting spread out over the years. So this is another thing that factors into not having an accurate cash number on your profit and loss, because right now it's showing an expense of $1,000 that you didn't actually pay in cash in this fiscal year. Otherwise, these are pretty standard expenses, wages. Let's say in this example, there's a couple employees involved and these are their wages. And sometimes, depending on your LLC structure, you will have some wages in there as the owner. So if you are getting an actual paycheck where like some taxes are taken out of it, that is going to show up here. But if you are not getting a paycheck and the way you pay yourself is just through what's called distributions, which is just kind of writing yourself a check or a transfer or whatever it may be, only the actual salary paycheck wages are going to show up here on the profit and loss. So in this example, we've got $150,000 in total wages. This is giving us our net profit number of basically $150,000. So we did our revenue minus our cost of goods minus our expenses gives us this about 150 number. Now this is why I wanted to make this video, is you might get this profit and loss and say, wow, I profited $150,000. And then you look in your bank account and there's only $20,000 in there. And you're like, well, where did all of that money go? So here I've touched on a lot of the items as we've gone through, but I just want to list them out here of things that cost cash and take cash out of your bank, but are not showing up here on your profit and loss, and therefore not matching up with this 150,000 profit number. The first one I already mentioned is assets. So let's say last year you bought $30,000 in assets. The next thing that's not going to show up here on the profit and loss is loan or credit card payments. So let's say you're using a business credit card. The expenses you put on that credit card are on your profit and loss, whether you have paid that card card in full or not, you are getting that deductible item on your profit and loss. So let's say you racked up some credit card bill or debt. Those payments, the cash actually being taken out to go towards those payments, are not going to show up on your profit and loss because the expense itself already did. Let's say with the assets, instead of paying in $30,000 in cash, you took a loan out and it's $500 a month towards that asset. That $500 payment for the loan is also not going to show up on your profit and loss. So in this example, let's say you have a $500 monthly payment from assets purchased in another year, because otherwise it's going to get a little complicated. But let's say that asset was purchased in the previous year and you've now paid $6,000 throughout the year towards that past loan. And then the final item that I did mention as well is distribution. So let's say in this scenario, you had 2 employees, but you aren't an S Corp yet, so you're still paying yourself by distribution. So let's say you gave yourself $90,000 in distributions. You probably should talk to your accountant about that if that's the case, but I'm just using this as an easy example here. So when we look at assets, loan and credit card payments, distributions, that comes out to be $126,000. That's not on your profit and loss. So if we take your net profit here of about $150 and look at all of these items that cash was taken out for, that adds up to the $126, you end up with a difference of $24,000. And you probably have about that in the bank right now. I think I even said that earlier. This is why your profit and loss is not a depiction of your cash and your cash flow. So I hope that gives you some clarity on what's going on in your business so you can better understand your numbers. If you want to improve your cash flow, your profitability, be able to take home more money, make sure you're paying your taxes, I highly suggest checking out our program, Adventure to Profit. You can click the link below to get a free trial. In this program, we help you not only grow your business, but make sure it's actually profitable. And part of that is having profitable cash flow. So if you're struggling with the finances in your business, click below. I hope to see you inside our community, and I'll see you in the next video.